Hollywood makes the Oregon Trail look like a grand adventure of brave pioneers conquering the Wild West with nothing but grit and determination. But here's what they don't show you. Most travelers spent their days knee-deep in mud, fighting off mosquitoes and shitting their brains out from dysentery. The Oregon Trail wasn't some heroic journey. It was 2,000 miles of pure misery that 500,000 people somehow convinced themselves was a good idea. Oh, and if you're enjoying these stories, I'd really appreciate a like or subscribe. Super curious where you're all listening from, so drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. Always blows my mind how people are falling asleep to this all over the world. Alright, let's head back to 1847. Trust me, it's going to be quite a ride. So congratulations, you just woke up in a cramped one-room cabin in Independence, Missouri. It's April 1847 and your eyes are struggling to adjust to the dim light filtering through the oiled paper window. The rough-hewn wood floor beneath your straw mattress is cold against your bare feet. You can smell coffee brewing over the hearth fire, mixed with the lingering scent of last night's cornbread and the earthy musk of the nearby livestock. Your name is Thomas Benton. Well, that's what everyone's been calling you since you were old enough to pull weeds from your pa's cornfield. And this morning isn't like other mornings. Today's the day your family joins a wagon train heading west to Oregon. 2,000 miles of unknown territory stretching ahead of you. Your pa has been talking about Oregon for months now, ever since your neighbour Mr. Wilkins came back from a meeting in town with wild stories about free land, 160 acres for anyone willing to work it. That's bigger than the entire town of Independence. That's more land than your family has ever dreamed of owning. Thomas, you up yet? Your ma's voice cuts through your thoughts. She's already been awake for an hour, packing the last of your family's belongings and cooking breakfast. Coming, Ma. You pull on your rough cotton shirt and homespun trousers. The fabric is scratchy against your skin, but it's sturdy, needs to be for what lies ahead. In the main room, your little sister Sarah is helping Ma pack food into a wooden crate. Your pa is outside, checking the wagon one last time. You've spent the last month getting ready, selling most of what you own, buying supplies, fixing up the old farm wagon. Eat quick now, Ma says, handing you a tin plate with cornmeal mush and a strip of salt pork. We need to be at the meeting spot by 7. The food is hot and filling. You savour it, knowing that meals on the trail won't be this good. You've heard stories from other families who've made the journey. 6 months of hardtack, beans, and whatever game the men can shoot. Outside, the April morning is cool but promising warmth later. Your pa is walking around the wagon, checking every bolt and joint. It's not one of those big Conestoga wagons you've seen in drawings. Those are too heavy, too expensive. Yours is a farm wagon, what folks are calling a prairie schooner, with wooden hoops bent over the top and a canvas cover stretched tight. Morning, son, Pa says when he sees you. Ready for the big adventure? You nod, though your stomach knots with a mix of excitement and fear. You're leaving behind everything you've ever known. Your school, your friends, the graves of your baby brothers who didn't survive their first winters. Come help me with the oxen, Pa says. The 4 oxen are already yoked and waiting. They're not the family's original work animals. Pa traded the farm horses for these beasts last month. Horses might be faster, but they can't pull as long or eat as little as oxen, and they're more likely to be stolen by Indians. Indians. The word sends a shiver down your spine. You've heard stories. Some say they'll attack the wagon trains. Others say they're mostly peaceful. Your ma packed an extra tin of sugar and some bright cloth scraps for trading with them just in case. By the time the sun is properly up, your family is ready. The wagon is packed so full you can barely see inside it. Barrels of flour and cornmeal, bags of beans, dried meat, coffee, sugar, tools for farming and building. Your ma's prized cast iron skillet and Dutch oven, seeds for planting. Your Pa's rifle and ammunition, a small chest with your family Bible and your Ma's wedding quilt. Everything else you owned has been sold or given away. There's barely room for people in the wagon, not that it matters. You'll all be walking most of the way. Only the very young, very old, or very sick ride in the wagons. Time to go, Pa says, and there's a catch in his voice. He was born in this cabin, built by his own father. Leaving it behind is harder than he lets on. Ma wipes her eyes with her apron, then squares her shoulders. Sarah clutches her rag doll, the only toy she was allowed to bring, and looks up at you with wide eyes. It's gonna be okay, Squirt, you tell her, though you're not entirely sure yourself. The wagon creaks as Pa flicks the reins and calls to the oxen. The wheels turn, and just like that, you're leaving the only home you've ever known. The journey to the meeting spot takes less than an hour. As you approach, you see dozens of other wagons already gathered in a large field on the outskirts of town. Men are checking harnesses and wheels, women are organising supplies, children run between the wagons playing tag, while they still can. At the centre of it all stands a tall man with a bushy beard and weathered skin. This must be Mr. Davidson, the wagon master who'll be leading your train. Your Pa told you he's made the journey 3 times already. Hard to imagine anyone wanting to do this more than once. As your wagon pulls up, other families nod in greeting. You recognise some from town. The Millers with their 5 children, old widow Jenkins who's travelling with her son's family, the Browns who sold their blacksmith shop to buy supplies for the journey. Mr. Davidson climbs onto a wagon and raises his hands for quiet. The chatter dies down as everyone gathers around. "The folks," he calls out, his voice carrying across the field. "Today we begin our journey to Oregon country. We've got about 120 wagons, 430 souls by my count. That's a good size, big enough for protection, not so big we'll strip the land bare as we go." He pauses, looking around at the faces turned up to him. "I won't lie to you. The trail ahead is hard. Some of you won't make it to Oregon." A murmur runs through the crowd. You feel Sarah's hand slip into yours, squeezing tight. "But most of you will," Davidson continues, "and what waits for you there is worth every hardship. Land, freedom, a chance to build something new." He goes on to explain the rules of the trail, how the wagons will travel, who takes what positions, the importance of staying together. Each family will take turns at different duties, scouting ahead, guarding the livestock, night watch. "We move out in 1 hour," Davidson finishes. "Say your goodbyes to independence. Next stop, Oregon country." As the crowd disperses, you look back toward town. The church steeple is just visible over the trees. You wonder if you'll ever see it again. "Thomas," your Pa calls, "help me secure these barrels." And just like that, there's no more time for wondering. There's work to be done. The next hour passes in a blur of final preparations. The wagons are arranged in the order they'll travel. Your family's wagon is 20th in line. Mr. Davidson rides up and down the line, checking that everyone is ready. At precisely 9 o'clock, he fires a pistol into the air. "Wagons! Ho!" he calls. The train lurches into motion. The lead wagons start rolling, and one by one the others follow. When it's your turn, Pa calls to the oxen, and your journey truly begins. The first day's travel is easy. The road out of Independence is well worn and relatively smooth. The oxen plod along at about 2 miles per hour. You walk alongside the wagon with Sarah, while Ma sits on the wagon seat with Pa. The other wagons stretch ahead and behind as far as you can see, like a great snake winding across the landscape. By midday, the excitement has worn off. Your feet hurt, and the dust kicked up by the wagons ahead makes you cough. Sarah is dragging her feet, complaining of tiredness. Up you go, you say, lifting her onto the wagon. There's no room inside, but she can sit on top of the canvas-covered supplies. When are we going to get to Oregon? She asks. You laugh. Not for a long time, Squirt. We've got about 170 days of this. Her eyes widen. That's forever. Oh no. Just until October or so, you tell her. We'll get there before the snow falls, if we're lucky. If we're lucky. You've heard the stories of the Donner Party trapped in the mountains by early snow last year, the rumours of what they did to survive. You shudder and push the thought away. The first day ends after about 15 miles. Mr. Davidson signals for the wagons to form a circle for the night, not because of any danger from Indians this early in the journey, but because it's good practice. The circle creates a corral for the livestock and defines the camp. Setting up camp is chaotic at first. No one quite knows what they're doing yet, but within an hour, tents are pitched. Fires are lit, and the smell of cooking food fills the air. Your ma is making a simple supper of bacon and beans, with biscuits cooked in the Dutch oven buried in coals. As darkness falls, someone pulls out a fiddle and starts playing. Others join in with harmonicas, a banjo, even a tin whistle. People gather around the fires, singing songs from back home. Sweet Betsy from Pike, Oh Susanna, Buffalo Gals. You sit with your family, watching the stars come out above the prairie. They seem brighter here, away from the lights of town. Sarah falls asleep in your ma's lap, worn out from the day's excitement. Get some rest, Pa tells you. Tomorrow's another day on the trail. You crawl into the small tent your family has pitched beside the wagon. The ground is hard beneath your blanket, but you're too tired to care. As you drift off to sleep, the sound of distant singing mingles with the lowing of cattle and the rustle of the prairie wind. The routine of trail life establishes itself quickly. Up before dawn, breakfast of coffee and biscuits, hitch the oxen, and on the trail by 7. Walk all day with breaks to rest the animals. Make camp at dusk, eat, sleep, repeat. The landscape changes gradually as you move west. The familiar woods and fields of Missouri give way to open prairie. The grass stretches to the horizon, waving in the breeze like a great green ocean. After a week on the trail, you reach the Kansas River. It's your first major river crossing, and the excitement in the camp is palpable. Some of the smaller streams you've crossed so far were simple. The oxen waded through, pulling the wagons behind them, but the Kansas is different. It's wide and deep, with a strong current. Mr. Davidson calls a meeting. We'll be ferrying the wagons across, he announces. There's a trading post here that runs a ferry. It'll cost $2 per wagon. There are grumbles from some of the men. $2 is a lot of money. It's that or risk losing your wagon and everything in it, Davidson says sharply. I've seen too many people try to ford this river and lose everything. Some lost their lives. That quiets the complaints. The crossing takes all day. The ferry is just a large raft that can hold one wagon at a time. The oxen swim across separately. By sunset, half the wagons are across, with the rest to follow tomorrow. Your family's wagon makes it across without incident, though watching it float on the rickety ferry makes your heart pound. The oxen bellow in fear as they're forced to swim, but they make it to the other side, dripping and exhausted. That night, camp is split between the two sides of the river. You can see the fires of the other half of your train across the water. It feels strange to be separated, vulnerable somehow. Will there be more rivers like this? Sarah asks as you sit by the fire. Many more, Pa says. The Platte, the North Platte, the Sweetwater, the Snake, the Columbia, each one a challenge. But we'll cross them all, Ma adds firmly, just like we crossed this one. You nod, but in your mind, you're counting the rivers ahead, each one a potential disaster, each one a barrier between you and your new home. As you lie in your tent that night, listening to the rushing of the Kansas River, you wonder what other challenges await on the long road to Oregon. The next morning, you're awakened by a commotion. People are shouting, running. You scramble out of the tent to see what's happening. A man from another family is being carried into camp, his leg bloody and twisted at an unnatural angle. His wagon had broken loose on the ferry and crushed his leg against the riverbank. The wagon train has no proper doctor, but Mrs. Peterson was a midwife back in Illinois. She takes charge, cleaning and splinting the leg. The man's screams make Sarah cover her ears and bury her face against Ma's skirt. "Will he die?" Sarah whispers. "No, honey," Ma says, but her face is grim. A bad injury like this, with months of travel ahead, you all know his chances aren't good. By noon, the rest of the wagons have crossed. The injured man's family decides to turn back to independence. They can't continue with him in this condition. 3 other families choose to go with them, shaken by the accident and no longer sure they want to face the trail. As they depart, heading east while your train continues west, a sobering reality settles over the group. You've been on the trail just over a week, and already your numbers are smaller. That night, there's no music around the campfires. People speak in hushed voices, glancing back toward the river as if it marks a boundary they can never recross. In a way, it does. You're committed now. Oregon or bust. The next morning, it rains. Not a gentle spring shower, but a prairie deluge. The canvas wagon cover drums with it, water finding every tiny hole and seam. The ground turns to mud that sucks at your boots with every step. The oxen struggle, sometimes sinking to their knees. Progress slows to less than 10 miles that day. By evening, everyone is soaked, cold and miserable. Making fires is nearly impossible with wet wood. Families huddle in their wagons or under them, eating cold food and trying to stay warm. Your ma somehow manages to keep a small fire going long enough to heat coffee. The hot liquid is the only comfort on this miserable night. The rain continues for 3 days. On the second day, one of the wagons gets stuck so deeply in mud that even with 4 extra teams of oxen, it can't be pulled free. The family has to unload everything, carry it forward through knee-deep mud, then take the empty wagon apart and reassemble it on firmer ground. By the time the skies finally clear, the mood in the wagon train is grim. This is the reality of the Oregon Trail. Not a grand adventure, but a grueling test of endurance. But as the sun breaks through the clouds on the 4th morning, spirits lift. Clothes and blankets are spread out to dry. The trail begins to firm up. By afternoon, you've made 15 miles, a good day's progress. That evening, someone brings out a fiddle again. The music starts hesitantly, then grows more confident. People gather, drawn by the cheerful sounds after days of misery. Soon there's dancing. Not formal dances like back in town, but simple reels and jigs that anyone can join. You find yourself pulled into a circle dance by Miller's daughter, a girl about your age with freckles and a quick smile. The mud is forgotten as you spin and stomp, laughing at your own clumsiness. For a few hours, the hardships of the trail fade away. You're not pioneers facing an uncertain future. You're just people, enjoying music and company under the vast prairie sky. As May turns to June, the wagon train falls into a rhythm. Wake, eat, travel, make camp, sleep. The days blend together, marked only by changes in the landscape and the occasional landmark. You cross into what Mr. Davidson calls Indian territory. The land here doesn't belong to the United States. It's home to various tribes, some pushed west from their original lands. Everyone is more alert now, scanning the horizon for signs of danger. but the first Indians you encounter are peaceful. A small group approaches the wagon train, led by a man in a mix of traditional dress and white man's clothing. Through a translator, one of the scouts who speaks a little of their language, they offer to trade fresh meat for coffee and sugar. Your pa gives Ma a nod, and she brings out the trade goods she packed. The exchange is quick and respectful on both sides. That night, your family enjoys fresh venison instead of the usual salt pork. See, Pa says to you and Sarah, most Indians just want to trade, same as anybody else. You treat them fair, they'll treat you fair. You nod, but you notice he still keeps his rifle closer than usual that night. As June progresses, the heat becomes intense. The prairie stretches endlessly, the grass now bleached yellow by the sun. Water becomes precious. Some days the only sources are muddy streams or stagnant ponds. The oxen are losing weight despite the abundant grass. The pace slows as Mr. Davidson insists on longer rest periods during the hottest part of the day. Disease appears in the camp. Several children come down with measles, spreading quickly among the wagons. 2 of the youngest die and are buried by the trail, their small graves marked with stones and wooden crosses. Sarah catches it too, her face covered in angry red spots, a small body burning with fever. For 3 terrifying days you watch Ma tend to her, bathing her with precious water to bring down the fever, praying over her at night. You take over driving the wagon so Pa can help with Sarah and Ma can focus on nursing her. On the 4th day, her fever breaks. The relief in your parents' faces makes your own eyes sting with tears you're too old to shed. You're getting to be quite the wagon master, Pa tells you, his hand heavy on your shoulder. It's the closest he's come to saying he's proud of you. By the end of June, you've reached the Platte River. Unlike the Kansas, it's wide but shallow, more of a giant muddy puddle than a proper river. But it's still a milestone. You've travelled about 250 miles from independence, only about 1,150 miles to go. The wagon train spreads out along the Platte, following its course west. The water isn't good for drinking, too silty, but the river valley provides a natural road west and water for the livestock. One evening, as you're helping Pa with the oxen, Mr. Davidson rides up. "Benton," he says to your Pa, "I need your boy tomorrow. We're sending a hunting party out. Need someone quick and quiet to help drive the game." Pa looks at you, a question in his eyes. You nod eagerly. After weeks of walking beside the wagon, the chance for a different task, a man's task, is exciting. He'll be ready at dawn, Pa tells Davidson. That night you can hardly sleep. A real hunting party. You've helped Pa hunt back home, but this will be different. You'll be helping feed the whole wagon train. In the grey light before sunrise, you join the hunting party. 5 men and you, the only boy. They give you an old flintlock rifle that's almost too heavy to hold. Your job is to circle wide around any game they spot and drive it toward the waiting hunters. The day is long and hot, but exhilarating. By sunset, you've helped bring down 3 deer and a dozen rabbits. When you return to camp with the meat, you stand a little taller. For the first time, you feel like you're truly contributing to the journey, not just following along. As the wagon train continues along the Platte, the landscape begins to change. The endless flat prairie gives way to more varied terrain. In the distance, you can make out the first hints of hills, the beginning of the long climb toward the Rocky Mountains. July finds your wagon train reaching Fort Kearny, a military outpost on the Platte. It's the first sign of white civilization you've seen in weeks, and the excitement in the camp is palpable. The fort itself is unimpressive. Just some wooden buildings surrounded by a low wall, but to your eyes, after so long on the trail, it looks like a city. There's a small store where families can replenish supplies, a blacksmith to repair wagon parts, and best of all, a post office where letters can be sent east. Your ma spends the evening writing a long letter to her sister back in Missouri. You add a few lines at the end telling your cousin about the hunting trip and the Indians you've met. The letter will take months to reach them, carried east by military couriers and stagecoaches. The wagon train stays at Fort Kearny for 3 days. It's a welcome break from the constant travel. The oxen rest and graze on relatively fresh grass. People wash clothes in the river, trade stories with other wagon trains, and enjoy the luxury of sleeping inside the fort's walls, safe from any potential dangers. But the trail beckons. Oregon is still more than 1,500 miles away, and summer won't last forever. On the 4th day, Mr. Davidson gives the order to move out. The wagons form their line once more, and your journey continues. As July turns to August, the real challenges of the Oregon Trail still lie ahead. The easy part is over. Now come the mountains, the deserts, the hardest river crossings. The journey has already changed you. Your skin is dark from the sun, your hands calloused, your legs stronger than they've ever been. But the Oregon Trail will demand more from you yet, and in your heart, a question burns. Will it all be worth it when you reach the promised land of Oregon? Only time will tell. The Platte River becomes your silent companion for the next several hundred miles. Unlike other rivers that cut through the land with purpose, the Platte sprawls lazily across the prairie, a mile wide and an inch deep as the joke goes among the wagon trains. It's really more like a foot deep in most places, but still, you could practically walk across it if you didn't mind getting wet. August has settled in with brutal heat. The water in the Platte is too silty to drink, full of fine sand that'll tear up your insides. Instead, folks dig wells near the river, about 10 feet deep, where the water seeps in clearer after filtering through the ground. Your daily routine has solidified into something between misery and monotony. At 4 a.m, the night watchman fires his rifle to wake the camp. You hear your ma stirring immediately, the rustle of her dress as she crawls out of the tent. She's always first up, starting the morning fire, before most folks have even opened their eyes. By 4:30, you're pulling on your boots. They're stiff from yesterday's mud, cracked from constant wetting and drying. Your feet have calluses on top of calluses now. When you started the journey, you had 2 pairs of boots. You're on your last pair now, and they're falling apart. Some folks have taken to wrapping their feet in rags when their shoes give out. Sarah stirs in her blanket next to yours. "Already?" she mumbles. "Yep, Ma's making Johnny cakes. Better get up if you want some warm." The smell of cornmeal cooking on the skillet gets you moving. Ma works magic with the simplest ingredients: cornmeal, water, a pinch of salt and a scrape of precious sugar when she's feeling generous. Everyone has the same basic supplies, but no one makes Johnny cakes like your ma. By 5 a.m, Pa has rounded up the oxen from the night's grazing. They look thinner than they did in Independence, ribs starting to show through their hides, but they're still strong. You've seen other families lose oxen to exhaustion or disease. Without oxen, a family is stranded, dependent on the charity of others to continue. Breakfast is quick. Johnny cakes with a strip of salt pork and bitter coffee that Pa and the other men gulp down like it's mother's milk. The beans are running low, so coffee's getting weaker by the day. Some families have taken to roasting prairie turnip roots as a substitute. Tastes like dirt, but at least it's hot. While you eat, you're already packing up. The tent comes down, blankets rolled tight, everything secured in the wagon. Nothing can be left loose or it'll be bounced right out when the wheels hit a rut. At 7 a.m. sharp, Davidson fires his pistol in the air. Wagons ho, the train lurches into motion, same as every day. The squeal of wheels and creak of wood, a familiar symphony. Today your family's rotation puts your wagon near the back. It's the worst position. You eat everyone else's dust, and if there's trouble up ahead, you're the last to know about it. The morning drive is always the best part of the day. The air still holds some coolness from the night, and the oxen move with purpose before the heat saps their strength. Sarah walks beside you for the first hour, playing a game where she tries to step only on your footprints in the dust. "You've got giant feet, Thomas," she giggles, stretching her legs unnaturally to match your stride. "All the better for walking to Oregon," you tell her. By 10 a.m, the sun is high enough to start baking the land. Sarah's retreated to the small space on the wagon seat beside Ma. You keep walking, one foot in front of the other. Your thoughts drift as you walk, back to Independence, forward to Oregon, sideways to nothing in particular. Sometimes you talk with John Miller, a boy about your age who walks beside his family's wagon. His pa was a blacksmith back in Ohio, and John knows all sorts of things about metal and fire. Other times you walk in silence, conserving energy in the growing heat. At noon, Davidson signals for the midday rest. The wagons form a loose circle, and the oxen are unhitched to rest in whatever shade they can find. It's too hot to cook, so lunch is hardtack, rock-hard biscuits made of flour and water, baked until they'll last for months without spoiling. You dip yours in water to soften it enough to avoid breaking a tooth. Some days there's a bit of dried meat or cheese to go with it, but not today. The heat of midday brings an eerie stillness to the prairie. Even the insects quiet down, waiting for the worst to pass. The only sounds are the soft lowing of the oxen and the occasional cry of a baby from one of the wagons. Everyone moves slowly, saving their strength. Ma has taken to using this time to check Sarah's hair for lice, a constant battle on the trail where bathing is a rare luxury. Sarah squirms under Ma's fingers but knows better than to complain. You've seen what happens when lice get out of control. The Pearson family had to shave their daughter's head last month when they couldn't get rid of the infestation. At 2 p.m, it's back on the trail. The afternoon stretch is the hardest. Hot, dusty, and seemingly endless. The landscape barely changes. Just the Platte River on your right and the prairie stretching to the horizon on your left. Occasionally, you'll pass the grave of someone from an earlier wagon train, a stark reminder of the trail's dangers. Some have proper markers with names and dates. Others are just mounds of earth, already being reclaimed by the prairie grass. The most unsettling are the possessions abandoned along the trail. Furniture, trunks, even entire wagons left behind when animals died or loads needed lightening. Back in June, these discards horrified everyone. Now, they're just landmarks. 2 miles past the broken piano, someone might say when giving directions. Today's excitement comes around 4 p.m. when a scout rides back from the front of the train with news of a buffalo herd ahead. The wagons halt while Davidson and the hunting party ride out. You wish you could go with them, but only the men with horses are chosen. They return 2 hours later with 3 buffalo bulls, already butchered into manageable pieces. Fresh meat is cause for celebration. Tonight, everyone will eat well. Camp that evening is more animated than usual. The smell of roasting buffalo meat permeates the air. Families share their portions with neighbours, creating a patchwork feast. The Browns contribute wild onions they gathered along the trail. The Wilsons have a precious jar of pickles they've been saving for a special occasion. Even Mr. Davidson seems to relax a bit, accepting a plate from your ma with a rare smile. "Fine cooking, Mrs. Benton," he says. "Reminds me of home." After dinner, someone brings out a fiddle. Mr. Everett, a tall man with hands like hammers, cradles the instrument as gently as a baby and draws the bow across the strings. The music rises into the twilight air. "Oh, Susanna," a favourite among the travellers. People gather in the centre of the wagon circle, first just tapping their feet, then dancing in earnest. Pa surprises you by taking Ma's hand and leading her into a lively reel. You've never seen them dance before? Ma's cheeks flush pink, and she looks younger suddenly, like the girl she must have been when Pa first met her. Sarah tugs at your sleeve. Dance with me, Thomas. Before you can protest, she's pulling you into the circle. You're clumsy at first, too aware of people watching, but the music works its way into your bones. Soon you're swinging Sarah around, both of you laughing. For a few precious hours, the hardships of the trail fade. You're not pioneers struggling toward an uncertain future. You're just people enjoying music and company under the vast prairie sky. But morning comes too soon, and with it the familiar routine. The journey waits for no one. The terrain begins to change as August wears on. The flat prairie gives way to more rugged country. In the distance you can make out actual hills, the first real elevation change in hundreds of miles. Chimney Rock rises from the plains like a beacon, visible for days before you actually reach it. That's our halfway mark, Davidson tells everyone. We've come about 1,000 miles, only 1,000 more to go, 1,000 more miles. The words should be daunting, but instead they fill you with a strange pride. You've already come so far, surely you can make it the rest of the way. Near Chimney Rock, your wagon train encounters another group heading east. It's unusual. Most traffic on the trail flows west this time of year. As they draw closer, you see their wagons are nearly empty, their animals thin, the people haggard. Davidson rides out to meet their leader. They talk for a long time, too far away for you to hear. When Davidson returns, his face is grim. They're turning back, he announces to the gathered families. Got as far as South Pass before losing too many oxen to continue. They say the grazing gets worse the further west you go. A murmur runs through the crowd. South Pass is still hundreds of miles ahead, the gateway through the Rocky Mountains. If they couldn't make it... What else did they say? Someone calls out. Davidson hesitates. They passed 3 other trains heading east, all turning back for the same reason, and they say the Sioux are restless this year, not happy with so many whites crossing their territory. Fear ripples through the group. Everyone's heard stories of Indian attacks, though your train hasn't seen anything but peaceful trading so far. We'll continue as planned, Davidson says firmly, but we'll need to be more careful with our animals, better grazing, longer rest periods, and we'll post extra guards at night. That night, no one brings out the fiddle. The camp is quiet, each family huddled around their own fire, speaking in low voices. The joy of the buffalo feast seems very far away. Your pa sits cleaning his rifle with unusual care. We'll be fine, he tells you and Sarah, though you haven't asked. Davidson knows what he's doing. You nod, pretending a confidence you don't quite feel. The vastness of the country suddenly seems threatening rather than grand. So much empty space between here and Oregon. So many things that could go wrong. The next day brings a new challenge, a river crossing. It's not the Platte itself, but a tributary that's swollen from recent rains upstream, too deep to ford safely, according to the scouts. Davidson orders trees to be cut down to build rafts. The work takes all day, everyone helping to fell trees, strip branches, and lash the logs together with rope. By sunset, you have 3 sturdy rafts, each big enough to hold a wagon. The crossing begins at dawn the next day. The first wagon rolls onto a raft, its wheels chocked with stones to keep it from rolling. 4 men with long poles push the raft across the river while the oxen swim alongside, urged on by their owners. The current is stronger than it looks. The first raft drifts downstream before the polers can correct, nearly capsizing before reaching the far bank, but they make it, the wagon rolling safely onto dry land. The second crossing goes more smoothly, the polers having learned from the first attempt. The third raft carries the Jenkins wagon. Halfway across, one of the logs shifts, throwing the raft off balance. The wagon slides sideways, its weight pushing the raft underwater on one side. You watch in horror as the Jenkins family clings to the tilting wagon. The current catches the raft, spinning it around. For a moment it looks like it might right itself. Then the wagon topples into the river with a massive splash. Men on both banks leap into action. Those who can swim dive into the water. Others run downstream, carrying ropes to throw to the struggling family. You stand frozen, Sarah's small hand clutching yours so tight it hurts. The Jenkins parents surface first, gasping for air. Their oldest son has his little sister on his back, swimming strongly towards shore, but their middle child, Emma, a girl about Sarah's age, is nowhere to be seen. There, someone shouts, pointing to a small hand breaking the surface downstream. 3 men swim toward it, but the current is carrying Emma away faster than they can swim. Without thinking, you kick off your boots and plunge into the river. The cold water shocks your system, but you're a strong swimmer from summers in the creek back home. You strike out diagonally, letting the current carry you downstream while angling toward where you last saw Emma. The water roars in your ears. You catch glimpses of the shore, people running, pointing. Then you see her, Emma's dress caught on a submerged branch, her head barely above water. You make a final push, reaching her just as she slips under. Your hand catches her dress, pulling her up. She coughs, sputters, eyes wide with terror. "Hold on to me," you gasp. She wraps her arms around your neck in a stranglehold that nearly drags you both under. The shore seems impossibly far away. Your clothes are waterlogged, pulling you down. Emma's weight is crushing. Just as your strength begins to fail, a rope splashes down beside you. You grab it with your free hand, and suddenly you're being pulled towards shore. Hands reach for you, dragging both of you up onto the muddy bank. Emma is taken from your arms, carried to her sobbing parents. Someone wraps a blanket around your shoulders. Through chattering teeth, you manage to ask, "The others?" "All safe," Pa says, his arm around you so tight it hurts. "Thanks to you, all safe." That night, you're a hero in the camp. The Jenkins family gives your parents a precious jar of honey, one of the few luxuries they manage to save from their wagon. Mr. Davidson himself comes to your fire to commend your bravery. But the incident casts a shadow over the train. The Jenkins lost nearly everything. Their wagon, most of their supplies, all their treasured possessions from back home. Other families contribute what they can spare, but it's not much. Everyone's supplies are running low. "What will they do?" you ask Pa as you watch the Jenkins setting up a makeshift shelter with borrowed canvas. "They'll ride with other families," Pa says. "We'll make room. That's how it works out here. Today them, tomorrow could be us." The Jenkins' oldest son rides with your wagon the next day. He's quiet, still in shock from the near tragedy. You don't know what to say to him, so you just walk in silence, occasionally pointing out interesting rocks or prairie dog holes, small distractions from his family's loss. By the time you reach Fort Laramie in late August, the wagon train has settled into a new rhythm. The Jenkins family is split among 3 wagons, including yours. Emma rides with Sarah in the back of your wagon. The 2 girls have become inseparable, finding comfort in each other after the river trauma. Fort Laramie is larger than Fort Kearny, a proper military outpost with soldiers in uniform and solid buildings. The sight of the American flag flying over the fort brings unexpected tears to Ma's eyes. "Feels like civilization," she says, wiping her cheeks quickly. The fort offers a chance to resupply at steep prices. Pa trades one of your spare wagon wheels for flour and coffee. The wheel is worth far more, but there's no arguing with the fort's traders. They know they're the only option for hundreds of miles. The truly precious commodity is information. Soldiers and traders at the fort have news from both east and west. The war with Mexico is over, with America gaining vast new territories. Gold has been discovered in California, triggering a rush of fortune seekers. And most importantly for your journey, the reports from Oregon are good. Fertile land, moderate climate, growing settlements. Your train stays at Fort Laramie for 4 days. The break from travel is welcome, but there's still work to be done. Repairing wagons, restocking supplies, tending to the sick. 2 families decide to winter at the fort rather than risk the mountain crossings with the seasons changing. Your train will leave with fewer wagons than it arrived with. On the eve of departure, Mr. Davidson calls a meeting. The easy part is over, he tells everyone bluntly. From here on, we face mountains, deserts, and the worst river crossings. The next stretch to Fort Bridger will test us all. He pauses, looking around at the faces gathered in the fort's courtyard. Anyone having second thoughts should stay here. No shame in waiting till next year. Better that than dying in the mountains. No one from your wagon group steps forward, though you see worried glances exchanged between some of the couples. The Jenkins family, surprisingly, stands firm. "We've come this far," Mr. Jenkins says. "Might as well see it through." That night, you lie awake in your tent, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the fort, soldiers calling to each other as they change guard, the distant nickering of cavalry horses. Tomorrow you'll be back on the trail, heading into country more rugged than anything you've seen so far. Pa's voice comes soft in the darkness. "Proud of you, Thomas. What you did for that Jenkins girl. Not every man would have done the same." Man. He called you a man, not a boy. You feel a warmth spread through your chest that has nothing to do with the August heat. "Get some rest," Pa continues. "Big day tomorrow, but sleep is elusive. Your mind races with thoughts of what lies ahead, mountains looming on the horizon, the promise and peril of the unknown trail. The journey has already changed you in ways you're only beginning to understand. 1,000 miles down, 1,000 to go. The true test of the Oregon Trail still awaits. The land west of Fort Laramie has a different feel, wilder somehow, less forgiving. The gently rolling prairie is replaced by broken country with sharp ridges and deep gullies. The trail follows the North Platte River, but even the river seems different here. Faster, colder, as if eager to escape this harsh terrain. September brings unpredictable weather. One day might be blazing hot, the next suddenly cold with biting wind. The mornings always dawn with frost now, the ground crunching under your boots until the sun rises high enough to melt it. Your wagon train has shrunk to 73 wagons. Besides the families who stayed at Fort Laramie, you've lost 2 more, one turning back after their oxen died, another forced to stop when the father broke his leg falling from the wagon seat. Or less competition for grass and water, Pa says pragmatically, though you notice he doesn't look at Ma when he says it. Everyone knows the real cost of each family that turns back or stops. Fewer hands for the difficult tasks ahead, fewer rifles if there's trouble. The trail grows steeper as you continue west. The oxen strain against their yokes, moving more slowly each day. You've all learned to walk bent forward, leaning into the slope like sailors on a tilting deck. Even the canvas wagon covers have a different set to them, pulled taut against the constant wind that blows down from the mountains. One morning, as you help Pa hitch the oxen, you notice dark clouds building to the west. Not the usual afternoon thunderclouds, but something different. A solid wall of darkness that stretches across the horizon. "Trouble coming," Pa mutters, following your gaze. By noon, the darkness has resolved into distinct shapes, riders, dozens of them, moving fast across the plain toward the wagon train. Davidson orders the wagons into a defensive circle, women and children inside, men with rifles forming a perimeter. Sarah clutches your sleeve, her eyes wide. "Indians," she whispers. "Looks that way," you say, trying to sound calmer than you feel. Pa hands you his old pistol, a single-shot flintlock that's seen better days. "Stay with your ma and sister," he says, checking the priming on his rifle. "You know how to use this if needed." The riders approach to within rifle range, then stop. One breaks away from the group, riding slowly toward the wagons with his hand raised. Davidson and 3 other men walk out to meet him. The rest of you wait, tense and silent, watching the encounter. The meeting goes on for what seems like hours, but is probably only minutes. Then Davidson and the others return to the wagons. "It's a band of Sioux," Davidson announces. "They want to trade, not fight." A collective exhale passes through the wagon circle. Pa lowers his rifle, though you notice he doesn't set it aside completely. "They've got meat and hides," Davidson continues. "They'll trade for coffee, sugar, ammunition, and cloth. Fair trades only. We need their goodwill to pass through their territory." The trading begins cautiously. A few Indians enter the wagon circle, while the rest wait outside. They're tall men, wrapped in buffalo robes despite the mild day, their faces painted with red and black stripes. They move with a confidence that makes the white men seem awkward in comparison. One approaches your wagon holding up a buffalo hide. Pa nods to Ma, who brings out a small sack of coffee beans, one of your last. The Indian examines it, sniffs it, then holds out the hide. Ma accepts it with a smile and a nod. The Indian's gaze shifts to Sarah and Emma, who are watching wide-eyed from the wagon. He says something in his language, then mimes rocking a baby, pointing to the girls and holding up 2 fingers. "He's asking if they're sisters," translates Mr. Wilson, who traded with Indians before. Ma shakes her head, points to Sarah, then to herself and Pa, then to Emma and toward the Jenkins wagon. The Indian nods. From inside his robe, he produces 2 small items. Dolls made of buckskin with real hair for the heads and tiny beaded dresses. He offers them to the girls. Sarah looks to Ma, who nods. Both girls accept the dolls with shy smiles. Pa starts to reach for something to trade in return, but the Indian holds up his hand, shaking his head. He touches his chest and says something that sounds like "wachi," then points to the river ahead and makes a crossing motion with his arms. "He's warning us about the river crossing," Mr. Wilson translates. "Says it's dangerous this time of year." The trading continues throughout the afternoon. By sunset, the Indians ride away with coffee, sugar, ammunition, cloth, and even a few metal tools. The wagon train has fresh meat, buffalo hides, and moccasins, softer on the feet than worn-out boots. That night, Sarah sleeps with her new doll clutched to her chest. You hear her whisper to it about Oregon, promising a nice house with a real roof once you get there. 2 days later, you understand the Indians' warning. The trail leads to a crossing of the North Platte. Not a ferry this time, but a dangerous ford where the river spreads wide and shallow. Shallow for a river anyway, still deep enough to reach the wagon beds. Davidson sends scouts to find the best crossing point. They return with grim faces. The recent mountain rains have swollen the river beyond its usual September level. There's no good ford to be found. "We'll have to float the wagons," Davidson decides. "Cork the wagon beds, waterproof everything inside, and float them across like boats. It's risky business. Each wagon must be partially disassembled, the wagon box sealed with pitch and tar, then floated across while men wade alongside, guiding it through the current. The oxen swim across separately, struggling against the icy flow. The first few wagons make it across safely, though soaked. Then comes the Peterson wagon. Halfway across, it hits a hidden rock and tilts sharply. Water pours in, and within seconds, the wagon is swamped. Mr. Peterson and his sons manage to save some of their possessions, forming a human chain to pass items to shore. But they lose their flour, their sugar, and worst of all, their seed corn for planting in Oregon. That night, as everyone dries out around the fires, your family shares some of your precious flour with the Petersons. Other families contribute what they can spare. No one says the obvious, that without seed corn, the Petersons may not survive their first year in Oregon. "We'll make it," Mr. Peterson says, his voice rough with emotion. "One way or another, we'll make it." The river crossing takes 3 full days. 2 more wagons are damaged, though none as badly as the Petersons. By the time the last wagon rolls up the far bank, everyone is exhausted, wet and on edge, and the real mountains still lie ahead. The trail now leads through country, unlike anything you've seen before. Towering cliffs of red rock, deep canyons, forests of pine and fir that smell sharp and clean after the dusty prairie. The air is thinner here, making your lungs work harder. At night, the cold is intense, frost forming on the inside of the wagon cover by morning. Food becomes the constant worry. Game is scarcer in the mountains, and what the hunters do bring back is lean, the animals having already lost their summer fat in preparation for winter. The grass is sparse and tough, providing little nourishment for the oxen. Davidson orders reduced rations. Breakfast is now a thin gruel of cornmeal, dinner a small portion of beans with whatever meat the hunters manage to find. Lunch has been eliminated entirely. The children receive extra portions when possible, but everyone is hungry all the time. The hunger makes tempers short. Arguments break out over trivial matters. Whose turn it is to collect firewood, who gets which cut of meat. Davidson steps in when needed, his authority unquestioned, but even he looks worried now, constantly scanning the sky for signs of early snow. In the second week of September, you reach Independence Rock, a massive granite dome rising from the plain like the shell of some enormous turtle. It's a landmark all travellers look for, covered with the names of pioneers who passed this way before you. They say you need to reach Independence Rock by the 4th of July to be sure of crossing the mountains before snow, Davidson tells the gathered families. We're more than 2 months behind that schedule. A murmur of concern passes through the group. Snow in the higher mountains would mean disaster. Wagons unable to move, oxen starving, people freezing. We'll push harder, Davidson continues. Longer days, shorter rests. We need to reach South Pass within 2 weeks. That night, despite the exhaustion and hunger, there's a small celebration. It's tradition for each family to carve their name on Independence Rock. Pa takes out his knife and carefully etches Benton Family, 1847, into the stone. You add your own mark beneath it, a small star, your personal sign that you were here, that you existed in this moment of history. The trail grows steeper beyond Independence Rock. The wagons struggle up rocky slopes that would have been considered impassable just months ago. Now they're just one more obstacle to overcome. The oxen are visibly thinner, ribs showing through their hides. Some can barely pull their loads and must be alternated with stronger animals. One morning, you wake to a strange silence. For a moment, you can't identify what's missing. Then you realise the wind has stopped for the first time in weeks. The air is perfectly still, and above the mountains to the west, the clouds hang motionless. Weather's changing, Pa says, studying the sky with a frown. By noon, the clouds have moved in, dark and heavy. The temperature drops rapidly. When the first snowflakes begin to fall, there's a collective groan from the wagon train. It's too early, someone protests, as if arguing with the sky might change its mind. The snow falls lightly at first, then with increasing intensity. Within an hour, the ground is covered with an inch of wet, heavy snow. The oxen low miserably, steam rising from their backs. Davidson orders the wagons to form a tight circle in a sheltered valley. Tarps are stretched between wagons to create additional shelter. Every piece of dry wood is collected for fires. By nightfall, 3 inches of snow cover the ground, and it's still coming down. The temperature continues to drop. Everyone huddles around the fires, wrapped in whatever blankets and buffalo robes they have. Sarah and Emma sit between you and Ma, sharing body heat. "Will we freeze?" Sarah whispers, her breath visible in the firelight. "No, squirt," you tell her with more confidence than you feel. "It's just an early snow. It'll melt in a day or 2. But it doesn't melt the next day, or the day after. For 3 days, the wagon train is trapped by snow and bitter cold. The oxen eat what little they can pour from beneath the snow, growing weaker by the hour. On the 4th morning, the sun finally appears, bright and surprisingly warm. The snow begins to melt, turning the ground into a muddy quagmire, but at least you can move again. "We've lost time we couldn't afford to lose," Davidson tells the group. "From now on, we travel from first light until we can't see the trail anymore. No midday rests unless the oxen are about to drop. The pace is brutal. You walk until your legs feel disconnected from your body, moving automatically while your mind drifts. The mud sucks at your feet, making each step an effort. The wagons creak and groan as they're dragged through the muck. Just when it seems things can't get worse, sickness sweeps through the camp. It starts with the Wilsons' youngest child. Fever, vomiting, bloody diarrhea. Within days, 12 people are sick, mostly children. Mountain fever, the older folks call it. There's no real treatment except rest and fluids, both in short supply. The wagon train can't stop for the sick. The threat of winter is too great. So the ill are bundled into the wagons, bouncing and jolting with every rut and rock. Their moans join the creaking of wheels and lowing of oxen in the trail's grim chorus. Emma falls ill next, her small face flushed with fever. The Jenkins family is still split among different wagons, with Emma riding in yours. Ma tends to her as best she can, spooning water between her cracked lips, bathing her forehead with precious water warmed by the fire. "Will she die?" Sarah asks one night, watching Ma tend to the delirious girl. "Not if I have anything to say about it," Ma answers, her voice firm despite the exhaustion etched on her face. For 3 days, Emma hovers between life and death. You take over more of the camp chores, letting Ma focus on nursing. Pa drives the wagon with extra care, trying to avoid the worst bumps for Emma's sake. On the 4th day, her fever breaks. The relief in the wagon is palpable. That night, when you stop to make camp, Emma asks for food, the first thing she's eaten in days. Others aren't so lucky. The Wilsons lose their youngest to the fever. The Harris's grandfather, already weakened by the journey, succumbs as well. Both are buried in simple graves beside the trail, marked with wooden crosses that will likely be gone by next spring. The sickness passes eventually, leaving everyone weakened but moving forward. The mountains loom closer each day, their peaks already white with snow. In late September, you reach South Pass, the gateway through the Continental Divide. It's not the dramatic mountain gap you imagined, but a broad, high valley between 2 ranges. The crossing itself is almost anticlimactic after the struggle to reach it. But the significance isn't lost on anyone. You've crossed the spine of the continent. The waters now flow west toward the Pacific rather than east to the Mississippi. You're truly in the west now, farther from home than you've ever been. That night, despite the exhaustion and hunger, there's a celebration of sorts. The last of the sugar is used to make a sweet gruel. Someone produces a fiddle that hasn't been played since Fort Laramie, and music fills the cold mountain air. You find yourself standing at the edge of camp, looking east toward the way you've come, and west toward the way ahead. The stars seem impossibly close here, the air so clear you feel you could reach up and touch them. Pa joins you, his breath clouding in the frosty air. "Quite a journey," he says simply. You nod, not trusting yourself to speak. The emotions of the past months well up suddenly. The fear, the exhaustion, the moments of beauty and terror, the people lost and the bonds formed, the child who left independence and the person you're becoming. "We'll make it," Pa says, as if reading your thoughts. "Not everyone will, but we will." You want to ask how he can be so sure, but you don't. Maybe certainty is something you have to create for yourself out here, where nothing is guaranteed. "Come on," Pa says, clapping you on the shoulder. "Your ma saved you some of the sweet gruel." You follow him back to the fire, where Sarah and Emma are giggling over something, their recent brush with death already fading from their minds. Ma looks up and smiles, the firelight softening the new lines of worry on her face. The Oregon Trail has already taken so much from all of you, but in this moment, huddled around the fire in the vast wilderness, you realize it's given something too. A strength you never knew you had, a clarity about what matters, and a bond with these people, your family and the others, forged in shared struggle. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, the long descent from the mountains, the arid lands beyond, rivers still to cross. Winter is coming, and you're in a race against time to reach Oregon before the passes close completely. But tonight you eat your sweet gruel and listen to the fiddle play "Home, Sweet Home," a song that has a different meaning now than when you left independence. Home isn't a place anymore, it's these people, this wagon, this journey you're on together. As you drift off to sleep that night, you wonder what Oregon will be like. Will it be worth all this? You hope so. You have to believe so. But in a strange way, you're beginning to understand that the journey itself matters just as much as the destination. The real Oregon Trail isn't on any map. It's written in calluses and scars, in graves left behind and memories carried forward. It's written in you now, changing you with every mile. Beyond South Pass, the landscape transforms yet again. The broad mountain meadows give way to steep descents, the western face of the Rockies dropping away before you. The trail here is treacherous, forcing wagons to navigate slopes that seem impossible for wheeled vehicles. Davidson orders wheels locked for the steepest parts. Iron chains are wrapped around the wheels, preventing them from turning, forcing the wagons to slide rather than roll down the inclines. The oxen strain backward against their yokes, fighting gravity every step of the way. "Hold the lines tight," Pa tells you one morning, handing you the reins as he walks alongside the wagon, ready to brace it if it starts to slide too fast. The responsibility makes your hands sweat despite the October chill. The wagon creaks and groans as it inches down the slope. One slip, one broken chain, and thousands of pounds of wagon, supplies, and people would careen down the mountainside. You've seen it happen to others. The Miller wagon lost a wheel on a steep grade last week, tumbling off the trail and smashing to kindling at the bottom of a ravine. The family survived, but lost nearly everything they owned. Reaching the bottom of each descent brings only momentary relief. The next ridge always looms ahead, another obstacle to overcome. The trail crosses countless streams, icy cold and swift with mountain runoff. Most are shallow enough to ford, but after heavy rain, even a small creek can become a raging torrent. October brings a new concern, not just cold, but the constant threat of early winter storms. The first snow beyond South Pass melted quickly. The second, a week later, lingered in shady spots for days. Everyone knows the third might be the one that stays until spring. "How much farther to Fort Bridger?" you ask Pa one evening as you help him rub down the oxen. The poor beasts are exhausted, their ribs showing prominently through their hides. "Davidson says 3, maybe 4 days if the weather holds," Pa answers, his breath clouding in the cold air. "It'll be our last chance to resupply before the Blue Mountains." Fort Bridger becomes the focus of everyone's hopes, a place to rest, to find food and medicine, to repair wagons and equipment worn to breaking point by the mountain passage. In the evenings around the fires, people speak of it like a paradise, though you've heard it's little more than a trading post with a palisade wall. The weather cooperates mostly. Days are crisp and cold, but clear, the October sun providing just enough warmth during the middle hours. Nights drop well below freezing now, ice forming in water buckets by morning. Extra guards are posted to watch for mountain lions and bears, hungry and aggressive as they prepare for winter. On the third day after your conversation with Pa, the wagon train rounds a bend in the trail, and there in the valley below sits Fort Bridger. It's even less impressive than you imagined, a collection of rough log buildings surrounded by a wooden fence that looks like it wouldn't stop a determined child, let alone hostile Indians. But it's civilization of a sort, and right now, that's enough. The fort's trading post is doing brisk business with the steady stream of emigrants heading west before winter. Prices are exorbitant, twice what they were at Fort Laramie, but people pay without complaint. There's no choice. Your family trades 2 buffalo robes and Ma's silver brooch, a wedding gift from her mother, for flour, coffee and salt. Pa haggles for ammunition, reluctantly paying a small gold coin he's kept hidden in his boot since independence. "Highway robbery," he mutters as you leave the trading post, "but we'll need the bullets. Game gets scarce in the Blue Mountains, especially once snow flies. The most valuable commodity at Fort Bridger isn't food or supplies, but information. Travellers heading east bring news of conditions ahead, while the fort's traders share what they've heard from other wagon trains." The news isn't good. Early snow has already fallen in the Blue Mountains. The Columbia River is running high and fast with autumn rains, and most worrying, a wagon train that left Fort Bridger just 10 days earlier encountered a party of Cayuse Indians who seemed unusually hostile. "We'll need to push hard," Davidson tells the gathered families. "I'm aiming to reach the Dalles before the end of November. From there, we can raft down the Columbia to the Willamette Valley." The Dalles, another mysterious name that's become a milestone in your journey. The last major obstacle before Oregon from what you've heard. The wagon train stays at Fort Bridger for 2 days. It's barely enough time to rest the oxen, but no one complains. Every day spent here is one less day to reach Oregon before winter sets in. When you move out on the third morning, the train is smaller again. 4 families have decided to winter at the fort rather than risk the Blue Mountains with the season advancing. Your father considered it, you overheard him discussing it with Ma late one night, but ultimately decided to continue. "We've come this far," he told her, "and I don't trust that trader Bridger. Something off about him." The trail beyond Fort Bridger enters yet another type of terrain. High desert plateau, sagebrush stretching to the horizon in all directions. The earth is dusty despite the season, the air dry enough to crack lips and knuckles. Water becomes the primary concern, with springs and streams growing scarce. "Got to reach the Snake River," Davidson tells everyone. "Follow it northwest all the way to Fort Hall, but it's 3 days hard travel to get there." Those 3 days are among the hardest yet. The trail crosses a barren waste where nothing grows but scrubby sagebrush and bitter greasewood. There's little grazing for the oxen, forcing families to break into precious reserves of corn saved for the worst times. Water comes from occasional springs, often so alkaline it makes the animals sick if they drink too much. Sarah develops a hacking cough from the dust. Emma, still weak from her bout with mountain fever, struggles to keep food down. Ma boils willow bark for tea, the bitter brew the only medicine left in your depleted supplies. The Snake River, when you finally reach it, seems like salvation. The water runs clear and sweet, the valley providing better forage than you've seen in weeks. For the first time in days, the oxen get enough to eat, and people fill water barrels with clean water. But the Snake has its own dangers. The trail follows the river through a deep canyon, with towering cliffs on one side and the rushing water on the other. In places, the path narrows to barely the width of a wagon, with a sheer drop to the river below. "Keep the wagon single file," Davidson orders, "and check your brakes at every stop. One slip here and you're in the river." That night, camped in a broader section of the canyon, the mood around the fires is somber. Everyone feels the pressure of the advancing season. The nights are bitterly cold now, with frost forming on the wagon covers before sunset. The children cough from a combination of dust and cold. The adults move like old people, stiff from the constant labour and inadequate food. Yet somehow, in this moment of collective exhaustion, a celebration emerges. It begins with the Johnson family. Old Mr. Johnson produces a fiddle from their wagon. Not the first time music has appeared on the trail, but rare enough these days when every ounce of energy goes to survival. He plays a tentative tune, fingers stiff with cold and age. His daughter-in-law begins to sing, a clear, strong voice that carries through the canyon. Sweet Betsy from Pike, a favourite trail song about a young couple heading west. Others join in, first just humming, then singing the familiar words. You watch in amazement as the energy in the camp shifts. People who moments ago seemed too tired to chew their food now clap along with the music. Someone produces a mouth harp, adding its wavering notes to the fiddle. Then Mrs. Wilson stands and begins to dance, pulling her reluctant husband with her. They stomp and twirl in the dust, their shadows thrown long by the firelight. Others join them, the Miller teenagers, the young Hayes couple, even old widow Jenkins. "Dance with me, Thomas." Sarah tugs at your sleeve, her cough momentarily forgotten. You shake your head, suddenly shy. But Ma gives you a gentle push. "Go on," she says. "Life's too short not to dance when there's music." So you join the circle, swinging Sarah around as she squeals with delight. Emma watches from beside Ma, still too weak to dance but clapping along with the rhythm. Even Pa eventually joins in, performing an awkward shuffle that makes Ma laugh for the first time in weeks. For one precious evening, the Oregon Trail becomes a place of joy rather than endurance. The music echoes off the canyon walls, probably alerting every Indian and wild animal for miles around. But no one cares. In this moment, celebrating life seems more important than the constant worry about survival. The next day dawns clear and cold, with a dusting of frost covering everything. But there's a lightness in the camp, a renewed energy. The music and dancing did something that food and rest alone couldn't. It fed the spirit. "Might make Fort Hall by sundown if we push," Davidson announces after a quick breakfast. "Good trading there, and proper shelter for those who need it." The trail continues to follow the Snake River, sometimes right along its banks, other times climbing high above the canyon. From these heights you can see for miles, the river winding below, the vast emptiness surrounding it, and in the far distance, another mountain range stretching across the horizon. "The Blue Mountains," Pa says, following your gaze. "Last real obstacle before Oregon." Last real obstacle. The words should be encouraging, but the mountains look impossibly high and rugged, their upper slopes already white with snow. Fort Hall appears in the late afternoon, another fur trading post, larger than Fort Bridger, but still modest compared to the stone fortress you'd imagined. The American flag flies above the main building, a reassuring sight in this wilderness. The fort's commander greets Davidson like an old friend. They've crossed paths before on previous journeys. The news he shares is mixed. The trail ahead is in decent condition, but snow has indeed begun falling in the Blue Mountains, and the Cayuse unrest that you heard about at Fort Bridger seems to be growing. Something's got them riled up, the commander tells the gathered emigrants. Might be all the traffic on the trail this year, might be something else. Just keep your eyes open and your rifles handy. That night, for the first time in weeks, your family sleeps indoors. On the floor of the fort's common room, along with 20 other families, but still sheltered from the wind and cold. The simple luxury of 4 walls and a roof brings tears to Ma's eyes. The fort's surgeon examines the sick, including Sarah and Emma. He has little medicine to offer. Supplies are as limited here as everywhere on the frontier, but he shares knowledge. A syrup of wild cherry bark for the coughs, rest and strong broth for those recovering from mountain fever. The morning brings a surprise, the season's first substantial snow, 3 inches covering the ground around the fort. It's a stark reminder of the race against winter that you're engaged in. We can't delay, Davidson tells everyone. Pack up, we move out in an hour. Leaving the shelter of Fort Hall feels like a physical pain. The warmth, the brief respite from constant vigilance, the momentary return to civilization, all snatched away too quickly. But Davidson is right. Every day matters now. The trail beyond Fort Hall continues to follow the Snake River for a time, then turns northwest toward the Blue Mountains. The terrain becomes increasingly rugged, with volcanic rock formations jutting from the earth like the spines of buried monsters. Water again becomes a concern. The trail leaves the Snake, crossing a high plateau where springs are few and often tainted with minerals that make the water barely drinkable. The snow provides some relief. Melted, it's pure enough, but not sufficient for so many people and animals. Signs of previous wagon trains become more evident here. Broken wagon parts, discarded furniture, even entire wagons abandoned when teams could pull them no further. More sobering are the graves, their crude wooden markers bearing witness to those who never completed the journey. Benton family, keep up, Davidson calls back one afternoon, noticing your wagon lagging behind the others. The terrain has grown so difficult that families often need to help each other, with extra oxen or men pushing from behind to get wagons up steep inclines. Pa waves acknowledgement, then turns to you. Thomas, run ahead and ask the millers if they can spare a man to help us. Our rear axle's cracking and I need to reinforce it before it gives way completely. You jog ahead to the Miller wagon where Mr. Miller and his oldest son quickly agree to help. With their assistance, Pa manages to bind the axle with iron straps salvaged from a broken barrel hoop. It'll hold to Oregon, Pa says with more confidence than the repair seems to warrant. Just need to baby it a bit on the rough patches. The rough patches, unfortunately, are becoming the norm rather than the exception. The trail now climbs steadily, entering the foothills of the Blue Mountains. The weather grows colder with each day, the snow deeper on the higher slopes visible ahead. A week after leaving Fort Hall, the first serious snow of the journey begins to fall. Not the light dustings you've experienced before, but heavy, wet flakes that quickly accumulate on the ground. By nightfall, 6 inches cover the trail, with more coming down steadily. Davidson calls for an early camp in a sheltered valley, wagons drawn close together for protection from the wind that has begun to howl down from the mountains. Extra wood is gathered before it becomes too snow-covered to burn. The oxen are brought into the wagon circle, canvas stretched between wagons to provide them some shelter. If it's still coming down like this in the morning, we stay put, Davidson announces. Can't risk losing the trail in deep snow. The night is miserable, too cold for proper sleep, the wind finding every gap in the wagon cover, snow accumulating on the canvas until the weight threatens to collapse it. You take turns with Pa climbing out every few hours to brush the snow away, your hands numb despite woolen mittens. Morning brings no relief. The snow continues to fall, visibility reduced to a few dozen yards. True to his word, Davidson declares a snow day, no travel until conditions improve. The forced rest should be welcome, but anxiety runs high in the camp. Every day spent here is one less day to reach the Willamette Valley before winter fully sets in, and supplies, already stretched thin, must now be rationed even more carefully to account for the delay. Sarah's cough has worsened in the cold. She lies bundled in every blanket the family can spare, her face flushed with fever. Ma melts snow for the wild cherry bark syrup, but it seems to provide little relief. She needs real medicine, Ma says quietly to Pa when she thinks you're not listening, and a proper roof, not canvas that lets in every draft. Pa just nods, his face drawn with worry. You've never seen him look so helpless. The snow continues all day and into the night. By morning, it's nearly 2 feet deep around the wagons, with drifts much higher. Davidson calls another meeting. "We can't wait any longer," he says bluntly. "At this rate, we'll be snowed in for the winter. We have to move, even if it's just a few miles a day. Breaking camp in such conditions is brutal work. The oxen must be dug out from their snow-covered shelters. Wagons that have settled into the snow overnight must be rocked and pushed until they break free. The trail, completely obscured now, must be found by sending men ahead on horseback to scout. Progress is agonizingly slow. The oxen struggle through snow that reaches their bellies in places. Men walk ahead of the wagons, breaking trail with shovels and axes. The wagons themselves move like wounded animals, creaking and groaning under the strain. By nightfall, you've covered less than 3 miles. Davidson tries to sound encouraging, pointing out that you've reached slightly higher ground where the wind has swept some areas clear of deep snow. But everyone knows the truth. At this rate, you'll never cross the Blue Mountains before they become completely impassable. That night, huddled around fires that seem pitifully small against the vast snowy wilderness, a new plan emerges. Davidson proposes splitting the train. The healthiest people with the strongest animals will push ahead at maximum speed, breaking trail. They'll then send help back for the others once they reach the Dalles. It's a desperate strategy, with risks for both groups. Those going ahead face the dangers of the trail with reduced numbers for protection. Those staying behind must wait in the snow with dwindling supplies, hoping help arrives before starvation or cold claims them. Families must make impossible choices. The Jenkins decide to split. Mr. Jenkins will go ahead with their oldest son, while Mrs. Jenkins stays behind with Emma and their younger children. The Millers will all go forward, their oxen still relatively strong. The Wilsons, with several sick children, have no choice but to remain. Your family faces the same terrible decision. Sarah is too sick to travel fast, but the family's chances might be better if at least some of you reach Oregon quickly. "We stay together," Pa finally says after a long discussion with Ma outside the wagon. "Whatever happens, we face it as a family." Davidson respects each family's choice, no matter what they decide. By morning, the wagon train has been divided. 37 wagons will push ahead, while 22 remain behind, forming a winter camp in the sheltered valley. The departure of the advance group is solemn, without the music and cheers that marked previous milestones. Just quiet goodbyes, promises to send help as soon as possible, and prayers for everyone's survival. As the wagons of the advance party disappear into the snowy distance, those remaining begin the work of creating a more permanent camp. Wagons are arranged in a tight circle. Canvas is stretched to create communal spaces between them. Hunting parties form to search for game in the surrounding forest. It'll be a hard wait, Pa tells you as you help him construct a more substantial shelter using pine boughs laid against the wagon. But Davidson knows what he's doing. Help will come. You nod, wanting to believe him. But as you look at Sarah, huddled and coughing in the wagon, and at the other families preparing for a long siege by winter, a cold fear grips your heart that has nothing to do with the snow swirling around you. The Oregon Trail has brought you 1,800 miles from independence. Just a few hundred miles remain between you and the promised land of the Willamette Valley, but those miles might as well be 1,000 if you can't find a way through the snow-choked mountains. As darkness falls on the winter camp, you climb to a nearby ridge, looking west toward where the advance party disappeared. Somewhere beyond those snow-covered peaks lies Oregon, so close, yet still out of reach. The winter camp quickly settles into a routine born of necessity. Each morning, men gather to hunt in the surrounding forests, returning with whatever game they can find, mostly rabbits and the occasional deer, already lean from the early winter. Women manage the precious food supplies, stretching every morsel to feed as many mouths as possible. Children old enough to help collect firewood, while the youngest and the sick remain huddled in wagons made as warm as possible with buffalo robes and pine boughs. Your family's wagon becomes a sick room for Sarah. Her cough has settled deep in her chest, each breath a painful wheeze. Ma rarely leaves her side, sleeping in short bursts while you or Pa keep watch. Emma, still weak from her own illness, sits with Sarah when she can, telling stories to distract her from the pain. "Tell me about our farm in Oregon again," Sarah asks one evening, her voice barely audible. Emma squeezes her hand. It's going to be in a green valley with mountains in the distance still capped with snow even in summer. There'll be a stream running right through the property, clear water full of fish. The soil is so rich that anything you plant just shoots up like magic. Will we have apple trees? Sarah's eyes are bright with fever but focused on this dream of the future. "A whole orchard," Emma promises, "and you and I will climb the trees and eat apples until our stomachs hurt." Sarah smiles, then closes her eyes, drifting into fitful sleep. Emma looks up at you, standing at the wagon's entrance. "She'll get better, won't she?" she whispers. You nod, not trusting your voice. The truth is, no one knows. 3 children have already died in the winter camp, their small bodies buried in frozen ground marked with crosses made from wagon parts. But Sarah is strong. She survived measles back in Kansas Territory, and a fall from the wagon that would have killed a less resilient child. "She'll make it," you tell Emma. "We all will." A week passes with no sign of improvement in the weather. The snow continues to fall intermittently, accumulating to 3 feet in places. The oxen grow thinner, despite efforts to find forage for them beneath the snow. Some families begin to slaughter their weakest animals, preserving the meat and saving the remaining feed for the strongest. Pa joins a group of men attempting to follow the trail blazed by the advance party, hoping to at least keep it open. They return after 2 days, half frozen and exhausted, having made it only 15 miles before being turned back by a new storm. "Trail's already drifting over," Pa reports to Ma that night, his voice low. If help doesn't come soon, he doesn't finish the thought. He doesn't need to. Food becomes the constant worry. Hunting grows less productive as game either migrates away or burrows deep to escape the cold. The communal supplies, already rationed, dwindle alarmingly. Meals shrink to a thin gruel in the morning and a small portion of meat or beans at night. The children receive priority, but everyone feels the constant gnaw of hunger. The second week brings new challenges. A pack of wolves, themselves hungry in the early winter, begins to circle the camp at night. Their howls echo through the darkness, sending chills through everyone huddled around the fires. 2 oxen are lost to the predators before the men organise a constant armed watch. On the 15th day, just as despair begins to take root, a shout from the perimeter breaks the morning quiet. Riders coming from the west. Everyone who can move rushes to look. Through the lightly falling snow, a group of riders approaches. 10 men on horseback, leading pack mules laden with supplies. The lead rider is John Miller, who left with the advance party. His face is gaunt but triumphant as he rides into the camp. "We made it through," he announces to the gathered crowd. The advance party reached the Dalles 5 days ago. Davidson organised this relief party immediately. We've brought food, medicine and news. The news is mixed. The advance party made it through the Blue Mountains, but not without losses. 2 wagons went off the trail in whiteout conditions. The families saved, but their possessions lost. 1 man froze to death on watch duty, but the majority arrived safely at the Dalles, the last major outpost before the final push to the Willamette Valley. "The trail's passable, but just barely," Miller explains as supplies are unloaded and distributed. "We marked it well with flags on tall poles that should stand above the snow. It's about a week's journey at best. There's a more immediate concern. The relief party can't transport everyone. They've brought enough supplies to sustain the camp for another 2 weeks, but the truly sick or weak need to be evacuated now." Sarah is among the first chosen to go. Her cough has worsened, and Ma's worried look when she checks her fever tells you everything you need to know. The Jenkins family is also selected. Emma still too weak for the harsh journey on foot. Ma will accompany Sarah, riding double with one of the relief party. You and Pa will remain with the wagon, following as soon as the trail is clear enough for oxen to pass. The farewell is hurried. The relief party wants to make as much distance as possible before nightfall. Ma holds you tight, whispering fierce instructions to take care of Pa and yourself. Sarah, bundled in every blanket that can be spared, manages a weak smile from the arms of the rider she'll travel with. "See you in Oregon," she whispers as they ride away. The camp feels emptier after their departure, though more than half the original group remains. The fresh supplies boost morale, but everyone knows the real challenge still lies ahead, getting the remaining wagons through the mountain passes to the Dalles. For another week, you wait as the weather alternates between clear, bitter cold and fresh snowfall. Hunting parties go out daily with diminishing returns. The oxen are hitched to empty wagons and walked in circles to keep them from growing too weak. Every evening, someone climbs the nearby ridge, looking west for signs of another relief party. On the 8th day after the first relief party left, the lookout spots more riders approaching. This time it's Davidson himself with 15 men and additional pack animals. "Time to move," he announces without preamble. "We've got a break in the weather and the trail's as clear as it's going to get. Pack only what you absolutely need. The rest stays behind." The abandonment of possessions is brutal but necessary. Furniture, books, keepsakes, even clothing, anything not essential for survival is left in a great pile in the centre of the camp. Some items might be retrieved in spring, but most will be lost to the elements or scavenging animals. Your family's wagon is stripped to the bare minimum. Food, weapons, tools, the tent, and a few personal items Ma insisted you bring for her. The photograph of her parents, Pa's father's Bible, Sarah's rag doll, small things that connect you to who you were before the Oregon Trail. The departure from the winter camp is solemn. 22 wagons arrived here, only 17 will leave. 5 families decided to winter in place rather than risk the mountain crossing, planning to continue in spring when the pass is clear. The journey that follows tests you in ways you never imagined possible. The trail, though marked with flags, is often barely discernible beneath the snow. The oxen struggle through drifts that sometimes reach their shoulders. Men walk ahead, breaking trail with shovels and axes. Progress is measured not in miles, but in yards. Davidson pushes the group relentlessly, knowing that another heavy snow could trap you all. The days start before dawn and end well after dark, the way lit by lanterns hanging from the lead wagon. There's no proper camp setup, just quick meals of cold food and a few hours of exhausted sleep beneath the wagons. On the 3rd day, you reach the highest pass through the Blue Mountains. The wind howls across the exposed ridge, driving snow and ice crystals that cut like tiny knives. The temperature drops so low that metal wagon parts become too cold to touch with bare skin. "Keep moving!" Davidson shouts over the wind. "Stop too long up here and you'll freeze solid!" The descent from the pass is almost more dangerous than the climb. The trail zigzags down a steep slope, each switchback a potential disaster if a wagon slides off the path. Wheels are locked, extra chains wrapped around them for additional friction. Men hold ropes attached to the wagon sides, ready to prevent a catastrophic slide. By some miracle, all 17 wagons make it down safely. The forest below the pass offers some shelter from the wind, though the cold remains intense. For the first time in days, a proper camp is established. Fires built large enough to thaw frozen hands and feet. "Worst is behind us," Davidson announces that night. 3 more days to the Dalles and the elevation drops all the way. Should see less snow with each mile. He's right. As you continue west, the snow gradually thins from 3 feet to 2, then to scattered patches among exposed ground. The temperature rises slightly, still below freezing, but no longer the bone-crushing cold of the high mountains. Signs of the advance party become more evident. Broken branches where they widened the trail, remains of campfires, occasional items lost or discarded along the way. It's reassuring to see these breadcrumbs leading towards civilization. On the 6th day after leaving the winter camp, you catch your first glimpse of the Dalles, a collection of buildings nestled along the mighty Columbia River. The sight brings tears to Pa's eyes, quickly wiped away before you can comment on them. "Almost there, son," is all he says, his voice rough with emotion. The arrival at the Dalles brings a reunion that floods your heart with joy. Ma and Sarah are there waiting, along with the Jenkins family. Sarah is still thin and pale, but the dangerous fever has broken. The fort's doctor had medicine, real medicine, that helped clear her lung. "Thomas!" she cries when she spots you running, despite Ma's protests to throw herself into your arms. "I knew you'd make it." The Dalles offers comforts you'd almost forgotten existed. Solid buildings with real walls and roofs, hot food that someone else cooked, beds raised off the ground. There's even a makeshift bathhouse where, for the first time in months, you can wash away the accumulated grime of the trail in hot water. But it's not the final destination. The Willamette Valley, the promised land of Oregon, still lies beyond the Cascade Mountains. There are 2 options for the final leg. Attempt the dangerous Barlow Road over the mountains, or take the river route, floating down the Columbia to Fort Vancouver, then south to Oregon City and the valley beyond. After the ordeal in the Blue Mountains, most families choose the river, including yours. The wagons must be disassembled and loaded onto large rafts along with all possessions. The oxen will be driven over the Barlow Road by paid drovers, meeting the families on the other side. Building the rafts takes a week, the entire community working together under the guidance of local experts. These aren't the simple log platforms used for river crossings, but substantial vessels designed to navigate the sometimes treacherous Columbia. Your family's raft is 20 feet long by 10 wide, with raised sides to prevent cargo from washing overboard. A crude shelter in the center provides some protection from the elements. A single large oar at the back serves more for steering than propulsion. The river's current will do most of the work. The departure from the Dalles comes in early December, much later than any previous wagon train attempted the final leg, but with the Barlow Road already snow-covered, there's no choice but to risk the river passage. The first day on the water is terrifying and exhilarating. The Columbia is massive here, far larger than any river you've encountered before. The current moves swiftly, carrying the rafts at a pace that makes the slow wagon travel seem like a distant memory. The surrounding landscape is breathtaking. Towering cliffs, dense forests, and waterfalls cascading hundreds of feet down rocky faces. Pa handles the steering oar, his face intense with concentration at the difficult passages. Ma keeps Sarah and Emma in the shelter, telling stories to distract them from the danger. You perch near Pa, ready to help if needed, watching in awe as the wild country slides past. The journey that would have taken weeks by wagon is compressed into days on the water. The river carries you past the towering cascades that give the mountain range its name, through narrow gorges where the water churns white with fury, and finally into the broader, calmer stretches as the Columbia approaches the sea. At Fort Vancouver, your family transfers to a smaller boat for the journey south on the Willamette River. The end of December finds you pulling up to a crude dock at Oregon City, the first real American settlement in Oregon country. Oregon City is barely a town by Eastern standards, perhaps 50 buildings clustered along the river with the surrounding forest only partially cleared, but after months on the trail, it looks like a metropolis. There's a general store, a blacksmith, even a small church with a proper steeple. More importantly, there are people who've made the journey before you, settlers from previous years who've established farms in the surrounding valley. They greet the new arrivals with genuine welcome, offering temporary shelter, advice on available land, and invaluable local knowledge. Your family spends the winter in Oregon City, renting a small cabin from a family that arrived 2 years earlier. Pa works odd jobs, saving money to buy supplies for the farm you'll establish in spring. Ma helps Sarah regain her strength, the girl's cough finally fading as the damp but mild Oregon winter proves gentler than the mountain snows. You find work at the general store, unloading supplies that arrive by boat and learning about the strange new territory that is now your home. The storekeeper, Mr. Halsey, takes a liking to you, impressed by your work ethic and the stories of your journey. You folks did it the hard way, he tells you one evening as you help him close the store. Coming across in 47 with all the troubles. Next year will be easier. They're improving the Barlow Road and there's talk of a proper ferry at the Dalles. Spring arrives earlier here than in Missouri. By February, the first flowers are already appearing. The rains that fell all winter begin to taper off, revealing lush green hills and valleys in every direction. The soil, when Pa digs a test hole behind the cabin, is rich and black. In March, with the guidance of Mr. Halsey and other established settlers, Pa secures a land claim in the Willamette Valley, 640 acres of prime farmland with a year-round creek running through it, just as Emma had described to Sarah during the darkest days in the winter camp. The day you first see your new land is one you'll remember forever. The wagon, rebuilt from the parts transported down the Columbia, crests a small rise, and suddenly there it is spread before you, a meadow bordered by forest, gentle slopes leading down to the creek, mountains blue in the distance. It looks like something from a painting, too perfect to be real. Pa stops the wagon, letting the oxen rest. For a long moment, no one speaks. Then Sarah breaks the silence. "It was worth it," she says simply. "Everything. It was worth it for this." Ma squeezes Pa's hand, tears streaming down her face. "Yes," she agrees, "worth every mile." You help Pa stake out the boundaries of the claim, driving markers into the soft spring earth. This land is yours now, or will be officially once you've lived on it and improved it for 4 years, according to the Donation Land Act. 640 acres, more land than your family could have ever dreamed of owning back in Missouri. Building begins immediately. First, a temporary shelter, little more than a lean-to, while the proper cabin is constructed. The surrounding settlers pitch in to help, just as your family will help the next newcomers. In Frontier, Oregon, no one survives alone. By May, the cabin is finished. 2 rooms with a stone fireplace, a wooden floor and real glass in the small windows. It's modest by Eastern standards, but it's solid and dry and yours. Ma plants a garden with seeds carried all the way from Independence. Pa and you clear fields for the first crops. The Jenkins family settles nearby on a claim adjoining yours. Emma and Sarah spend their days exploring the surrounding woods and meadows, collecting wildflowers and watching the deer that still graze unafraid of humans in this new land. Summer brings the first harvest, vegetables from the garden, berries from the forest, fish from the creek. Fall sees a modest crop of corn and wheat planted in the newly cleared fields. It's not much, but it's enough to see you through the coming winter, with some to trade in Oregon City for supplies you can't produce yourself. As winter approaches again, your first full winter in Oregon, you often find yourself standing at the edge of your family's land, looking east toward the distant mountains you crossed. From here, the hardships of the Oregon Trail seem almost unreal. The endless walking, the river crossings, the mountain snow, the constant hunger and fear. 2,000 miles, 6 months of travel, danger, disease and death always lurking. The journey changed you all, hardened you, tested you, forced you to discover strengths you never knew you possessed. Sarah still coughs sometimes when the weather turns cold. Ma's hands, once smooth, are now permanently roughened by work. Pa's face has new lines carved by sun and worry. And you left Independence a boy and arrived in Oregon something else entirely. But here, watching the sunset paint the Willamette Valley in gold and purple, feeling the rich Oregon soil beneath your feet, you know Sarah was right. It was worth it. Every muddy mile, every river crossing, every mountain pass. Worth it for this new beginning, this chance to build something that belongs truly to your family. The Oregon Trail will forever be part of you, the story you'll tell your children and grandchildren someday. The great journey that tested a nation's spirit and helped forge a country that stretches from sea to shining sea. As darkness falls on your family's new home, you turn back toward the cabin where lamplight glows in the windows and smoke curls from the chimney. Tomorrow brings more work, always more work on a frontier farm, but tonight there's warm food, family gathered close, and the deep satisfaction of having completed a journey few would dare to attempt. And as you drift towards sleep in the cabin your own hands helped build, you carry with you the legacy of the Oregon Trail, the courage to face the unknown, the strength to endure hardship, and the hope that drives people to risk everything for a better tomorrow. And with that thought, close your eyes and drift off to sleep, carrying the pioneer spirit with you into your dreams.